everybody, it's Emily at Dark Schooling, and today I want to do a wrap up of my March reads, but I don't really want to talk about all of them. So we're getting the March reads highlight. So I'm really bad at doing wrap ups because I forget the things that I read when it's been too long. Like a full month later, I don't know. It's too long for me to give you an in-depth synopsis or my in-depth thoughts or any of that. But I did read some really great stuff in March, so I didn't want to let the month go without talking about any of it. So I'm giving you the highlights. I'm only going to pick out like some of the books. I read 15 books this month, so I've been averaging about 15 to 16 books a month. So I did read a lot of things. So the first book I wanted to give a shout out to, basically, that's like what this is. These are the things that I'm like, you should read this too. And the first book I want to talk about is Max in the House of Spies by Adam Gidwitz. I had the ARC for this, and I was really looking forward to reading it because it was just a different perspective than I've seen done before on World War II. And I mean, I have read a lot of World War II fiction, so for me to say, hey, this is something new, that's exciting. So this is a story about a German Jewish boy whose family is able to get him on the Kindertransport, which was basically a way that England helped get children out of Germany at the start of World War II. So he was able to get on the Kindertransport. They only allowed like 100 children or something like that. And so he's able to get to safety in England, but he feels awful about it. He doesn't want to leave his family. He doesn't know what's going to happen to them. He's also really smart and really good with like tinkering and messing around with radios in particular. So he thinks like the family he's staying with, he finds out that they're connected with like a spy system. And so he's decided that the best way for him to help his family is to become a spy and help them defeat Germany and get him back into Germany. So like, one, we have this kid who's too smart for his own good and convincing adults like that he should be allowed to be a spy and get back into Germany where it is absolutely not safe for him to be. And so the story is just really good. But what I loved about it was, on top of just a really good story, it's very exciting, action-packed. I think kids will love that. On top of that, the author is raising some really great questions, like, why is this happening? Why did we let this happen? Like, should children be able to do things like this? Like, the book is really good. I have a full review for it up on History Book by Book if you want to go check that out. But like, I just loved it. It's going to be a duology. I want to read the next book so bad. Like, I want to know what happens because it ends on a cliffhanger and I'm just very curious to see where he takes the story. Then I read what is maybe one of my new favorite middle grade series of all time, which I'm saying that as a person who's only read the first book. And I read The Book Wanderers by Anna James. I am late to the game on this series. I'd heard about it. I've had a few people tell me I should read it. So I finally bought the first book. And since it was middle grade March, I was like, why not? Let's do that this month. And I'm so glad that I did. This is such a cute idea. I've always loved the idea of like being able to go inside of a book. I read the Thursday Next series years ago, but I only read the first 2 books. I need to go back and reread and finish the series. But I remember reading, what is it called? Inkheart, I think, by... who is the author? I don't know. I'll put the book up. I can't remember. But I hated that because I felt like the idea was there. It was such a cool concept, but like they were afraid to use it, which drove me crazy because I'm like, you could do so many things with this, but yet you're not. So I loved what Anna James did with The Book Wanderers. The idea here is that some people have this innate talent or ability to like go inside of a book or have characters come out of a book and like talk to you. And I love that idea so much that like you love a book so much that you could find yourself inside of it and like being a part of the story. I just thought this was great. The story itself had some twists and turns. I mean, it's middle grade. I saw a lot of it coming, which is fine because I think I'm an adult. I should see that stuff coming, but like I feel like for a child, like this could be amazing. There are 6 books in the series. I've only read the first one. I think the 6th book just came out. I am hoping to get to the rest of the series sooner than later because I just thought it was adorable. But yeah, I definitely recommend, if you haven't read it yet, or if you have children who are really into books and like voracious readers, like definitely check this out. I read Out There Screaming, which is a collection of short stories edited by Jordan Peele. This is a series of stories that are about like the horrors of being Black in America, essentially. And so it's a bunch of different authors, each telling a story. I really enjoyed this. Sometimes collections like this can be hit or miss because you're getting so many different stories from so many different authors. Some of them you've maybe never read before. And, you know, some are good and some are okay and some are not great at all. But I thought actually this was a really solid collection of stories. Like, I think there's maybe only 2 that I gave 3 stars, because of course I rated each story as I read, but like only 2 of them were 3 stars, and I had a lot of 5-star stories in there. It was really good. I've heard people say this isn't horror, and I am baffled because it was absolutely horror. Like, there are stories in here that were like, there was ghosts, there was a person like turning himself inside out. That is horror. I'm sorry, that's body horror. P. Jelly Clark, man, he writes some graphic stuff, but it's so good. I definitely need to read more of his work. There were several authors in there that I'm like, okay, I'm definitely reading more from this person. So I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm definitely in my horror girly era because I am suddenly just picking up all the things, but I'm loving it. Another arc I finally got around to this month. I'm like getting behind. I started the year ahead and now I'm suddenly behind again, which is fine. But I read The Underground Library by Jennifer Ryan. What did I read? The Kitchen Front. I read The Kitchen Front last year when it came out and I liked it. I thought it was really fun. She writes very light-hearted kind of stories, which is nice because I read a lot of heavy books, especially when it comes to World War II stories. I read a lot of heavy things. So to find something set in that era that is also kind of light and fluffy is nice. It's a nice change of pace. And that is what this is. This was a light, fluffy story. This is a story about a group of women who are like organizing to save the little library in their part of London, and it's set during the Blitz. So like they bring the library underground. See, this is the thing I didn't know. I've read about the Blitz before, but I did not know. I don't think I've ever read anything set in London during the Blitz. Most of the stuff I've read is about like people being away from London because of the Blitz. But this is set in London. So a thing I didn't know was that during the Blitz, people would go into like the underground subway stations to like sleep all night, almost every single night during the Blitz because it was one of the safer places to be. And so that was fascinating. And like they would bring books from the library to the underground and like they would read stories. So they would have like a story to read. And that just made me think about The Book Thief, because that's one of my favorite things from The Book Thief was when Liesl would read when they were in the shelter and kind of keep everyone's focus on that. So it was nice to see that that was something done then too. And then they would give out books to borrow from the library. It was a very cozy, nice story. It has romance. It has like a little bit of everything. If that's the kind of thing, if that's more your vibe, I definitely recommend checking out Jennifer Ryan's books. Then I read one of my 12 recommendations from 12 friends. I read A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I went into this very excited because I had heard good things about it. I already owned it. Like I bought the fancy version from Owl Crate a few years ago when it came out. And it's very nice. It has like the gold edges and everything. It's very pretty. So I bought that because I knew I wanted to read it. It sounded great. It's a magical school situation. It's dark academia. So I finally got a chance to pick it up. So thank you for recommending it. I gave it, I think, 4 stars because it wasn't my favorite thing I've ever read, but it was really good. I don't know that I'm going to continue, but I might. I'm really bad at continuing series, and I don't own the rest of it, so we'll see what happens there. But I enjoyed it for what it was. This is a fantasy story where this school for like children with magic is super dangerous. Like the way they set up the school, and I'm not going to explain it well because let's be honest, this book was confusing in the beginning, and it took me half the book to really understand what was happening, which is why I don't read a lot of fantasy, because I feel like there's too much stuff I need to know at the start to really get it. And that definitely happened here. The main character is super unlikable, and that made it harder for me to get into as well. By the end, I think I was there, and I did enjoy it. But like, I just felt like half the time I didn't quite get what was happening. I loved the concept though, the idea that this school is set up to try to protect these kids because their magic like draws these creatures to them that want to kill them and eat them for their magic. And so the school is set up to protect them until they graduate. And when they're seniors, like all hell breaks loose and only some of the class survive. So this is a story where we're following a junior. So she's getting close to graduation, and like what is the experience like at the school for her, how she's like handling it and stuff. So it was really interesting. The concept of it was great. I just didn't really like the main character, didn't really connect to her well, and I found it a little info dumpy, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I might move on to the next one at some point because I am kind of curious to know where it goes. I read Wild Oak by C.C. Harrington. I read this because it was middle grade March, but also because I've had people request a lip bite for this book. And since it was already on my radar as a book that I was curious about anyway, I decided to go grab it at the library and see what I thought. And this was so good. Oh my gosh, I'm excited about the lip bite. This is a story about a girl who has a pretty severe stutter. And it's set in the 60s. Her school is not helpful, and they recommend that they send her somewhere else. And so she's very frustrated. She doesn't want to be sent away. She doesn't want to be sent to this particular school that they're recommending because she's heard stories of abuse from there. And so her mother, who is sympathizing with her, wants to send her to stay with her grandfather for a few weeks because he lives in Cornwall in the countryside, and she thinks it'll be good for her. And her father's like, no, we need to send her to this place because she needs help. And so he agrees to let her go stay with her grandfather. She's really good with animals. And for some reason, when she talks to animals, she doesn't stutter. So she's always spending a lot of time by herself with her little animal friends that she takes care of. And so she gets to see her grandfather that she's never met. And she's getting to know him and going out in the woods. And we're also following the perspective of Rumpus, who is a snow leopard kitten who was set free in the woods, and his experiences, because he doesn't belong there and he doesn't know what to do. He's never been in the wild. And so, of course, they get to know each other. This story has so many great rabbit trails one can follow. We're following a character with a disability, and I love the portrayal that they did here. I thought it was a really great representation. We're also talking about snow leopards and like, what do you do when you come upon a wild animal? That's a great tangent to follow. We're also talking about conservation. So there's a lot of great stuff in this story. I loved it. I think this is one of those books that a lot of children are going to love. And it says on here that it reads like a classic, and I do agree with that. It did feel very much like a work of fiction that will be around for a long time. So I'm glad I picked this up, and I'm excited for the lip bite that I'm working on right now. Then I read We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter. I'd had the ebook for this for a while because I'd been wanting to read it. And then I saw that there was a series coming out on Hulu. They were adapting it. And another person that I follow, Yid Kidlit, was like looking for people to do a buddy read. And of course I'm terrible at that. I said yes, I would do the buddy read, but then I was like the last person to get around to reading it because I had other things I had to finish first. But I still loved it. This book is maybe one of my new favorite, like, I don't want to call it Holocaust because it is during that period, but the characters aren't in concentration camps. So it's kind of a weird, like, is it Holocaust? It is, but it isn't. But it's one of my new favorite books. This is a story that is based on the author's family, and it's about how they made it through the war. They were in Poland, and they were a prosperous family, and we're following all the different family members as they're on their journey during the war. So like you have one of them that made it to France. He was already in France when it started, and he wanted to come home, but like his mother was like, no, it's not a good idea. You shouldn't come back, and just stay where you are for now. And we have another character who ends up in the Russian side of, well, there's several characters that end up on the Russian side of Poland when it splits between Germany and Russia. So you see what's happening in like the German side, you see what's happening on the Russian side, and like the characters get spread all over the map. And it's just it's an interesting view of the whole war as seen through the eyes of this Jewish family and what they did to survive the war. And it was so good. Like, I cried. It was beautiful. I'm very excited to watch the series. Like, the first 3 episodes are already up. I think there's a new episode up every Thursday on Hulu, so definitely recommend checking it out because that was beautiful. I loved that book so much. I need to purchase a copy so I can have it on my shelves. And then the last book I want to talk about is I read Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shauna McGuire. I've been wanting to read a book a month to catch myself up. I missed it in February, so this month I finally made it happen. I actually read it yesterday on the 31st. Because it's only 150 pages, I had the audiobook, and so I just listened to it at like 2.5 speed and flew through it in like 2 hours. But I liked this one, but not as much as other books. I think I'm discovering that when it comes to the Wayward Children's series, I prefer the books set in other worlds to the books set in the school. Like, I always end up giving the school books like a 3.5 or a 4-star, and the books set in other worlds end up getting closer to a 5. So this was not my favorite, but I do like the character of Cora quite a bit, so I liked getting to follow her. I did enjoy the way the school is set up. So this one is set up at, now I'm not going to remember the name of it, the Whitethorn Institute, I think is the name of it. And so it's a school like Eleanor West, but where Eleanor West is setting her school up to help the children kind of cope, and maybe they'll find a way back to their fantasy world or their portal world, or maybe they'll have to just live in this world, but she's there to like gently help them. Whereas this school is set up to like fix you. You're here now. You don't live there. You're not in your world anymore. You're in this world and you just need to deal with it. And it's kind of set up like a prison. And that was really interesting. Like, that part of it I thought was great. I don't know. There was a lot of like interesting world setups. Like, one character, like, they briefly mentioned where some of the characters had been. One character had been in a Halloween world, and I desperately want that book. Like, I need it. It was a world where it's Halloween all the time. I want to read that. So I'm hoping that that's something we get in future books. So that was cool. But yeah, I wanted more. I wanted more fantasy and less of the reality of it, I guess. So it was fine. I think I ended up giving it 4 stars, but I think it's more like 3.75 if I'm gonna be like specific. But overall, I think I had a pretty good reading month. I read 15 things and 5 of them were 5 stars. So that's not bad. I think my lowest rating too was only like a 3. So yeah, my lowest rated book is a 3. I haven't DNF'd hardly anything this year either. So I'm doing good. I'm having a pretty good reading year. I'm excited. So let me know down below, what was your favorite thing you read in the month of March? I think my favorite was We Were the Lucky Ones. That was beautiful. Highly recommend checking it out. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.